Hey, my name is Ryan Earnhardt from CreativeSoundLab.tv, where audio recording is an art form. Well, a couple episodes ago, I did the Glyn Johns technique. I've really enjoyed hearing your comments and your thoughts below that video. Thank you for commenting. I always like to hear what you have to say. Now, for this video, I have something a little interesting. And, you know, the Glyn Johns technique starts with that overhead microphone and then it arcs down to that side microphone. Well, today is a little different, and I think today is kind of a solution to the problem that I've talked about. You know, you have the problem of a thin floor tom, you have the problem of swinging cymbals and things like this. So today is really about the reverse Glyn Johns technique. And this is really just trying to eliminate a lot of the weaknesses of the Glyn Johns technique, really traditionally how it's set up. Let me show you a little bit about what I mean. So the traditional Glyn Johns technique really started with having a mono overhead looking down towards the kit, and you can move it around to find a good balance. That was really how it got started. Then adding a secondary microphone, wow, that sounds really cool. Now a lot of modern engineers will actually measure the distance from the original overhead to the extra side microphone so that these distances are the same distance. This microphone is supposed to pick up this floor tom, but you know, my experience, it really always sounds kind of funny. This microphone usually does a pretty good job of getting this high tom to sound fairly full, and usually I can get the snare to sound pretty good as well, but this side microphone is always a weakness, and it's just been driving me nuts. So I'm developing the reverse Glyn Johns technique. So instead of starting with this original overhead, we're gonna first start with this side microphone. And we're gonna play around with this until it actually sounds good for once. And we're gonna aim to make sure that this floor tom sounds nice and full. As I'm sure many of you know from one of my older videos, is these cymbals can really rock and cause havoc on this microphone. So we wanna watch out for any rocking of the cymbals. Either keep this mic low or keep it extra high. Keeping the mic extra high means that we don't have any of that proximity effect. So in this case, we're gonna keep this side microphone fairly low. We're almost recording the whole kit for my floor tom mic. Then, once we have this mic set and we know that we have it sounding good, now what we can do is we can measure this distance into the snare. And then now we can go to our overhead microphone and go this way. The traditional technique was going the other way. We set up the overhead first, just like a mono overhead, and then add this as a secondary mic. Well, now we're working our way backwards. We're finding a position where we are able to bring out the fullness of this floor tom, because it's always the weak spot, and then go backwards. Now this mic, we can experiment with the position, move it more closer to the drummer for more snare sound, move it out toward the front of the kit for more of a tom heavy sound. Usually I'm aiming this to be kind of over the snare or even over the front rim of that snare drum. So this is really the reverse Glyn Johns technique. Let's see how this sounds.
Tell me, love, is this where we end? With me drunk on the street again.
So a couple things that I'm noticing with these examples. You know, today's example was not done with a snare mic. I have one set up, but I wanted to recreate last episode and really do a nice comparison just of the two large diaphragm condensers and a kick mic. So I chose not to do a snare mic. Now what I've been noticing from these examples is that really as long as you have a good balance of cymbals to the toms, then you should be good to go. You can always use a snare mic to bring that up in a mix. I've been noticing that these examples, the snare has kind of been getting lost in the mix. But I am happier with the balance of the toms. And usually for cymbals, I don't want them blaring anyhow. So this is where it gets kind of tricky. Toms are already hard to place in a mix at like just the right volume. And you have to really make sure that, you know, if you want the toms at say this point here, where you're gonna want the cymbals. They're kind of banded together, they're strapped together. And it's gonna be pretty hard to adjust the balance of cymbals and toms. Moving the mics closer will give you a little bit more toms, moving them away will give you a little bit less. But as long as you like the balance of how loud the toms are versus how loud the cymbals are, and you like the phasing, and you like the fullness of that low tom, then you should be good to go. As long as you can add a snare mic in to get your fullness of the snare, now you have all the bases covered. You have kick, you have snare, you have two full sounding drums, full sounding toms now. The trick is to make sure that you like that balance of the toms to those cymbals. Okay, so I know this seems basically like the same technique, but it's all in how you arrange your priorities when setting this up. You know, traditionally you listen to that top mic, you think of it as a big picture, but instead, hey, you know, let's work backwards. Let's find a position for that lower mic that gets us some proximity effect out of that floor tom. Once we have that, now we can find our measurement to arc back up to that overhead. Now this overhead mic, it can be adjusted just as easily as the traditional technique where we're trying to find an overview of the kit, but the difference is that we have our measurement coming from that bottom mic. That's the important one, and we move the top one and adjust it to be that same distance, equidistant from the snare drum. So let me know what you thought of this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll be hanging out in the comments below.
Turn to